Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? We're back and better than ever. This is Braggs in the Stands. I am your host, Gregory Braggs Jr., and alongside me, as always, is my guy, Kraig Bowers of Boiler Diehards, very popular Facebook group. Make sure you go ahead and follow them there. They're talking everything Purdue Boilermakers, including Purdue Boilermakers football, which is in the Big Ten Championship. For the first time here, winning the Big Ten West, taking on Michigan. So it's been a huge week for Purdue sports, but tonight we are talking Purdue men's basketball because they also had a huge week. So, Kraig, how you doing? How you feeling? Did they call school off? Are you guys rioting in the streets in West Lafayette? What was today like feeling as a Purdue loyalist and alum?
Everybody had to go back to work today, unfortunately. But a lot of people have talked about across social media about whether this is maybe the greatest regular season sports week that they can remember from a Purdue fandom standpoint, just with the combination of both what the football team accomplished on Saturday and then the Purdue basketball team accomplishing something that hadn't happened since the 1960s. Knocking off 2 top 10 teams in a neutral site in the same week back there. So definitely a lot of excitement in West Lafayette around the program and at Purdue University as well. I'm really excited to hear from our guests that are coming on today to kind of put it in perspective as well. I know there's some people that go back a lot further in Purdue sports than what even I do that maybe could speak to some time back in the 50s, 60s, 70s that might match this. But from as long as I can remember, this is about as good as a week as Purdue sports fans have had.
Yeah, because everybody wants the holy grail of Purdue men's basketball getting to the Final Four, but football's not going on then. So this is the one time you have this perfect storm of two of the most popular sports for Purdue athletics. So without further ado, we're going to bring on our guy. Special guest tonight, needs no introduction, but we'll give him one anyway. The heart and soul of the Purdue Boilermakers at one point in his illustrious career in West Lafayette. And that guy is Chris Kramer, as you see right here, locking up one of the greatest to ever do it, Steph Curry. And I know that's something he always gets asked about. We asked him last time he was on. I know that's probably a proud moment for you. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good, guys. I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good.
We're ecstatic. I mean, we're scrambling. It's been a long weekend. Late games. They're going to, 2 a.m. on Saturday night with Gonzaga, or Friday night. I'm losing track and everything else going on in our lives. So, but we thought, hey, we got to make sure we talk about this, historic week for Purdue basketball before they play Florida State on Wednesday. So, we appreciate you coming on such short notice, Chris. You're very active on Twitter, and I think for a fan base, we appreciate that because there's a lot of different talking heads. Some know the game better than others, but when you and other former players like Rafe, go on there and give your insight, it certainly holds a lot more water. What are you seeing from this team in this short start to the season, 6 games in, that's impressed you or kind of, lit a light bulb off as far as what their potential could be, or just your overall thoughts of what this team has done so far here in this first 6 games?
I mean, they're exceeding everybody's expectations, thus far. I think they're very committed. They're very committed to each other. They're very committed to both offense and defense, and I think that shows. And that's something that's different from last season. But when they're committed and they're playing for each other, Jay Billis said it in the game against Gonzaga and the game against Duke. They really don't care who the guy is. They just want to win.
Right.
And, that selflessness, that sacrifice for each other for the betterment of Purdue is going to win you a lot of games. but that commitment that they have, they hold each other accountable. But the one thing I've really liked is that they're able to weather storms. They might get punched in the mouth a few times, and, they're able to, whether it's with a timeout or without, come back, battle back, and then eventually take the lead and then win those games. And for such a youthful group to be able to do that with, your two main guards being freshmen, the future is definitely bright, but, we're in the present, and, they're one of the hottest teams in the country. In my opinion, Zach Edey has to be the front runner to win National Player of the Year, along with Coach Painter being the front runner to win National Coach of the Year. I mean, obviously, we're 6 games into the season. There's a long way to go, but, they're balling, and, that's all I can say.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. There's so many great things about this team. The connectivity of them, the selflessness, but I think the thing that probably stands out the most is how hard they're trying, the grind, the first to the floor. In the last game, Zach Edey, the tallest guy on the court, is the first to the floor for a loose ball. This is where you made your mark as a Purdue Boilermaker. This is what you're known for. Defense lives here. The hustle. When we went to the practice, Kraig and I, and you were there as well with your beautiful family. We watched Braden Smith have a hustle play that got the biggest round of applause of the entire day. So this is something that the fans at Mackey Arena appreciate more than anything. How contagious is that? When a guy like Brayden Smith is setting the tone with that kind of tenacity, the way you set the tone with that, is that something that's tangible as far as its contagiousness, or is that, am I not giving enough credit to the individual buy-in from each and every one of the players?
First of all, let's start with Braden. In my opinion, his job is to set the tone. He's the head of the snake offensively. He has to get us into our sets. But defensively, he has to set the tone, and he's done that in every game. If there's a loose ball, if there's a chance he can get it or not, he's laying out. The one play that the ball's going out of bounds, he saved it to our basket. It was a big play in the game. I don't remember who we were playing.
Yeah, Braden. It was getting to the end of the shot clock. Braden Smith dives out of bounds like he's Dennis Rodman in that infamous picture where he's diving out. Slaps the ball all the way to the other end of the court. Which the thing that a lot of people I think went on, it wasn't just the hustle; it was the smarts to slap it to the other end. And I don't know if this was his plan, but then they had to inbound the ball all the way on the other side of the court with only 1 second on the shot clock. Had he not done that, they're inbounding the ball right near their hoop with 3 or 4 seconds to get a shot off. So, and then at the end of that play, Fletcher Lawyer is diving at the ball as well. And that's where the contagiousness, I feel like, sets in. But that was the play you're speaking of. And that, I think, illuminated it more than anything.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's not just Braden. It's not just Fletcher. It's Mason Gillis. It's Zach Edey. When your best player is diving on the floor for loose balls, as a team, you guys have a big chance of success. But in your point, it is very contagious. And also, you don't want to be the one guy that's not diving on the floor because you'll stick out. Coach Painter always used to say, I don't care who we're playing in front of, how many people are there. I want the person that knows nothing about basketball to walk out of that game and be like, wow, Purdue might not have won, but they definitely played harder than the other team. And that's what this team is definitely embodying. And, but on the flip side, they have a whole lot of skill, and they have a monster down low that is just, dominating.
Yeah, absolutely. Kraig, go ahead and fire away.
Yeah, the other thing to me about those two guards is man, they just play fearless. Like no moment seems to be too big for either of those two guards. And I think as freshmen, that's just incredible. And especially there's been a couple of different games where we've struggled out of the gate a little bit, but Fletcher's really knocked down some early shots to kind of keep us close until everybody else kind of settles in. But what's it say, Chris, for those two freshmen, and especially for Braden Smith as the point guard, how hard is it? You played for Painter. Like, how hard is that as a freshman to get Painter's trust to have you out on the floor starting and then in key moments down the stretch and play the way they're playing?
I mean, you know, for Brayden, he's essentially the only point guard we have on the team.
Yeah.
You know, we have, you know, Jenkins Jr. playing point guard, but he's really not a point guard. And, you know, Brayden has surpassed everybody's expectations. You know, a lot of people didn't know what to expect, but to his credit, he's came in with the confidence, the leadership, and everything from day one. Like, this is my team. I'm going to lead us as the point guard, and I'm going to be vocal. I'm going to lay it on the line. And at times against Marquette, I'm going to carry us, you know, just like when he did it, just whatever he did in high school, those same moments that he would have when he was a senior in high school leading his team, he was able to do at Purdue. So that fearlessness is just something that I think you either have or you don't. You know, they both put in that work. You know, same with the whole team. You know, they're all ready to go. Sometimes when you get on the road, or some of these games are basically road games, and you know, the crowd gets going, you're a little more amped up than you might, you know, normally be. But just having, you know, Fletcher come down and, you know, make a wide open three to kind of get everybody to take a deep breath, you know, get Zach going a little bit, because there's a few games he's been a little slow to get going. But that fearlessness that they have is something I feel like either you have or you don't, but they both have it, and it's great for Purdue.
Definitely.
Yeah, and
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I was just gonna bring on our next guest, but you know,
nope, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to keep our superstar waiting there, Chris. But you know, you're absolutely right. When it comes to Braden and Fletcher, it's almost insane to think that this is only 6 games in, and there's a potential of having these guys for a full 4 years each. Don't want to get greedy, but at the same time, it's a beautiful thing to think about. So without further ado, our guy getting off the plane at like 4 a.m. You know, we've told some stories about him on here, so we're going to bring him on.
Hey, you know, all I'll say is I won't go into detail, but I picked up Bobby and Robbie one night at Mad Mushroom when they were when Mad Mushroom was across from Mackey. Bobby will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, we'll be pulling this story from Bobby.
And then I would say the night before we left to go to Australia for our overseas trip.
There it is. A little bit of that story from the last time we had Chris on. We saw his dad at the practice. He wouldn't divulge where this story went because his dad flew with you guys to Australia. This is this, like, you know, urban legend of Bobby ripping up West Lafayette. Welcome back to the show, Bobby Buckets. You know, we appreciate both of you guys coming on such short notice to talk about such an eventful week in Purdue men's basketball. I know you just got off the plane and you're getting back on the plane tomorrow to head to Tallahassee for Florida State versus Purdue, which is absolutely ridiculous that the schedule makers did that to these kids while they also have to do homework, by the way. So we appreciate you coming on. We don't expect you to tell us the rest of that story, but thought we'd bring you in that way today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'll just say work hard, play hard. My motto at times at Purdue. Might have been one of those play hard. instances.
Maybe.
Chris is referring to, but yeah, lots of good memories, good times from my days at Purdue. Yes, definitely, like you said, as far as the kids having classes go, I was fortunate. I had some vacation, took a vacation day today, got a nap in, hung out with the kiddos for a little bit. But I overheard Cam Heidi when we were at the airport saying he had a 7:30 to 10:30 lab or something.
Ridiculous.
Like, man, I'm glad I wish I was in college, but for tomorrow, I'm glad I have a vacation day I can just pull out of the ace in the hole for me compared to you guys having to go to class. So that was
last year when the Purdue had a big win and Texas Sasha was like, hey man, a great win, rest up. He's like, no, I have a bunch of homework I have to do in a class. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're not just there to play basketball. And I think fans don't appreciate that or consider that as much. I think these guys get a free ride when they go to school. That is definitely not the case, certainly not at Purdue. So Bobby, we've been talking a little bit here with Chris about what we've seen and what's transpired, especially over this last week, taking down West Virginia and then Gonzaga and Duke back-to-back, 2 blue bloods, top 10 in the country, first team to do that since the 70s, UCLA Bruins. I mean, we're back to where we were last year as far as success for this team. And it's pretty amazing because I don't think any of us saw it coming together this quickly. And you just don't know what to make of it because last year at this time, like I said, they won in Connecticut. They take down Villanova. They take down, North Carolina. And I said to you, I'm like, I think it was after the Florida State game. I'm like, how are they going to lose this year? I'm always the one that's going to get too gassed up, and I'm definitely
glad that always.
Yeah, I am right back at that point with this team. So I could bloviate all night long about how I think this team is even harder to beat. But I want to hear your thoughts on what you're seeing in this evolution from this team that we've seen over the last week.
Well, first off, how excited I was to beat Gonzaga. That was a fun win for me. I would have been definitely a tail between my legs the rest of the season if we would not have gotten it done against Gonzaga, considering all the, chopping it up we had about them last year. And they're certainly a great program. They got a lot of talented dudes. Our whole thing has always been we'd like to see, them have to go through the grind of playing a major conference schedule to get rewarded with 1 seeds every year. But, Chet Holmgren, Andrew Nemhard, as much as, we dogged that team last year or whatever here on this podcast from time to time, those dudes are absolute studs. They're pros, and they weren't around anymore for that Gonzaga team. And from a defensive standpoint, you could certainly see they missed Chet Holmgren as far as their rim protection goes because, they weren't putting a lot of pressure on us on the perimeter. And I think maybe that's a style of play they've probably had. But when, you don't have that, it's nice to have some rim protection around the rim to cover up mistakes or breakdowns. And without Chet, they definitely lacked that. And so we're certainly able to take advantage. It was a nice welcome change from that standpoint. It was a tough defensive assignment for us going from maybe a less talented West Virginia to a more talented offensive team in Gonzaga. But from a flip side, going against a team that just pressures the out of you on the perimeter, making it really hard for you to reverse the basketball, run your set plays, get the ball inside in West Virginia to a team like Gonzaga who, isn't going to pressure you nearly to the same level, doesn't have the rim protection, isn't nearly as physical. That was a welcome change because you could tell we were able to have a lot of success offensively in that matchup. So grand scheme of things, it was obviously a terrific trip. It was really fun to watch just how hard we play all 3 games. I thought we really seemed like a nice connected team this early in the season. No egos, guys just being unselfish, making the extra pass, diving on the floor. It was tremendous, and I couldn't be happier. It was an awesome trip.
Yeah. Before I let Bobby go, was curious. We put this picture up on Twitter. I mean, you make Chris Kramer look like Zach Edey in this picture.
Golly. Yeah, CK looks like he's a center next to me.
I'm sorry, I had to bust that out at some point tonight.
I remember I'd be when you're in a defensive stance and when you're guarding in practice, you don't ever feel like you're substantially shorter necessarily from like the guards you're guarding. But then like whenever you'd see yourself in a picture, out of the town or something with your buddy and they're towering over you, you're like, wow, I'm at a major disadvantage.
It's a testament to you to get into that level.
CK was like passing over me like the way Zach passes over me.
Did you ever dunk on Bobby in practice? Did this ever occur?
I don't think so. I don't think
try
so.
blow by me and dunk on someone else, but I don't think he actually got me ever.
Yeah, I think Bob would make business decisions and just get out of it.
Very good.
We're lucky the social media team
take a charge, and that could have ended up badly too. But
back then, Bob was really focused on just getting buckets.
Yeah,
because Bob and Mark Wolford would be like our scout team.
Mm-hmm.
And the one I remember is we're at Penn State. Bobby and Mark Wolford are being like Taylor Battle and
Stanley Pringle.
Danny
Morrissey a little bit.
Yeah. They can shoot it from anywhere. And they're shooting it from like volleyball line everywhere. And they are just destroying us. And Coach Painter's just going off.
You can't guard Bob and Mark. How do you expect to guard these guys?
If they're going to shoot from out there and beat us, then you know what? We don't deserve to win. But, man,
me and Mark had to go on that day.
You guys were just destroying us. That was more Bob than Bob locking up on the defensive.
Well, I had a couple of moments from time to time during my career, which I think of fondly. That's one of them. But I unfortunately was on the wrong side of things many times with this guy. Kramer, when he would get you in practice defensively, if you didn't create some space, if he got up in your grill, he was taking your basketball and he could a lot of us, unfortunately.
I love it. That was
really Chris's thing. Like Chris, when he got to school as a freshman, we had some guys coming back on that team that had played the year before. We weren't very good, but we had some guards come back, and Chris just came in from day one and was basically just taking everybody's ball left and right. And I think kind of forced Coach Painter's hand, like, I think I better play this guy because he's going to give us a dimension, certainly on the defensive end, that we don't have. So
I love it.
I took him under my wing, and told him like, hey, these guys grill, just take their ball. It's not hard.
Sure. No, hey, we love the inside stories. Maybe one day we'll get Robbie on here with you guys too, and we'll just go off screen. You guys can trade them all night long, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time tonight. So we'll fire a few more of these current Boiler questions away. Kraig, what else you got for these guys?
Yeah, before each one of those games, you heard the kind of analysis talk about how you beat Zach Edey and how you put him in a bunch of ball screens and you make him play defense on every play going through ball screens and that you run him up and down the court. But Gonzaga plays as fast about anybody in the country, or at least they want to. And we saw in a couple of different games there where they tried to put Zach in a bunch of ball screen action over and over again. And he sure seemed to hold up. So I guess what are you seeing from the way Zach is playing against ball screen action this year? And then how do you – if you're a Painter and you're that team and they want to get up and run and try to run Zach up and down the floor, how do you kind of try to stop that?
Go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead. Okay.
So polite.
I'm with you. I think he's certainly moving just laterally, vertically, everything better on the floor this year than he ever has. Looks to be just in the best shape, in the best condition physically that he's ever been. And I think that's been huge as far as just his mobility. Of course, the ball screen defense, that's not just it's not a one person thing. That the guy guarding the basketball is always extremely critical as well. And I think we're probably doing a better job this year as far as our on ball defense on some of that action, as far as fighting through it and being into the ball handler and allowing that guy guarding or allowing Zach Edey or whoever's hedging that ball screen to be able to get back to their man and recover. And with Zach, though, we just play drop coverage with him. He's just too big basically to play anything else. So he's more experienced at it now. He's getting more reps at playing this drop coverage. And now with his, increased mobility, he's starting to try to learn the different angles and, steps he can take to try to maximize his ability to still alter any sort of floater or mid-range jumper that a ball handler takes while also staying connected with his man that's rolling to the basket or popping. We haven't faced too many, because Zach has just been so dominant on the offensive end and like getting guys in foul trouble. We haven't seen too many situations where they've gone like super small and put like a Kyle Filipowski at the 5 for extended periods of time, where Zach really has to guard a guy who's a true pick and pop, like deadly shooter, because that's a whole different equation, doing that drop coverage and then getting out. We saw that with like Hunter Dickinson at times last year. So, Duke didn't really have a chance to go to that lineup very much because like Filipowski was in foul trouble and Zach was just scoring every time he touched it. So like against their bigger bigs, so let alone Filipowski, if you would have tried to guard Zach for too long. So it's going to be interesting to see if a team goes an extended time period with that, what would happen. But certainly Zach, I feel like from a rim protection standpoint and just mobility has been the best he's been at his time at Purdue, which has been a big part of why our defense is much improved this season.
No, I agree. I think the biggest thing is his stamina is off the charts. He doesn't look tired. He just looks dominant.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's very rarely ever seen like huffing and puffing, it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, his time that he spent with the Canadian men's national team was huge for him, getting to go against guys that really are, grown men from these other countries, and even, the Canadians that he's going against every day in practice. That was so crucial for him, because normally when he goes up against these guys in college, he's so much bigger, so much stronger than them. But when you're going against those grown men and those guys that have played professionally for so many years, that little of experience that he had was crucial for his time, coming this season. But defensively, he's just in drop covers, like Bobby said. The one thing I think he could get better at is just trying to take away the pocket pass. You see Gonzaga did it a couple times, hit Drew Timme on the short roll, and then when somebody helps, they kick to the corner. If he can keep that one hand in the passing lane and deflect those balls that they're trying to throw, those bounce passes to the big. But, they're going to play drop coverage because he's so big and he can't get in foul trouble. That's one way to keep him out of foul trouble. Your guard has to, keep pressure on the basketball, fight over the screen. And really, you saw it against Duke. They're going to give up pull-up jumpers. You're going to beat us shooting pull-up jumpers, then, we'll shake your hand, and, the next team's got to do it too. Because percentages say consistently knocking down that mid-range jumper, with a defender coming around contesting with maybe a stunt from the strong side, and then Zach kind of being there, those aren't easy shots. So, but I think it's all when you have Mason Gillis or Ethan Morton on the strong side being long and stunting when you're about to pull up. You're thinking a little bit. You have Braden Smith or somebody else, Brandon Newman coming around guarding you on the ball screen. They're coming around to block. You got a lot to think about. But I think definitely keeping him out of foul trouble is the biggest thing. But he's so big. Drop coverage is really the only thing you can do. But then you see with Caleb First, they're hedging ball screens and he's sprinting back.
Yep.
So it's not just one thing, they're changing it up. And then also I think they played what I would call ice or blue defense. They keep the ball on the side when the ball gets to the wing sometimes, depending who they're guarding, and just keep that guy maybe to his left hand like they did against Marcus Carr last year in the NCAA tournament. Just keep Marcus Carr to the left, and, Zach Edey just plays, to his left hand no matter where his big is. So that just comes down to communication.
Yep.
But, I think Zach being the anchor and talking with his dominant force on the offensive end definitely takes away the other team's transition and fast pace. And then just his communication as being the back guy and the guy in the pick and roll has definitely made Purdue a great defensive team so far.
Yeah, I mean, that's the word of this team. They're connected. The communication and the hustle is what's separating, because last year's team did struggle defensively. And, you don't pin it on one guy. They all held their responsibility to it. But just in a general statement, if one person isn't doing their job, you hear Painter say it so many times, do your job. And that's what that means, because if you don't, it's a trickle-down effect, and it affects the entire defense, and it can break down, just like you're seeing Purdue break down defenses. Once that breakdown starts to happen, it's a trickle-down to eventually an open shot or an open layup. And this team just isn't giving that up right now. And that is, I think, what is exciting fans for, Big Ten play, because that's what it takes to win in the Big Ten. Moving to the other side of the ball, and like I said, if either of you got to go, you literally just hit click, gone. Well, no hard feelings, because we want you to come back and not think, oh, these guys keep me on too long. So please, at any moment, just get out of here. But I do want to ask on the offensive side of the ball, we mentioned, like I said, we always pull this picture up. I love this. It's a great picture. The reason I bring it up, though, is because if we're moving to the offensive side of the ball, our guy in the backstage, Joe Jackson, they do a great job. They hold these spaces just like a few other outlets do. And there was, actually, I think it was in Habitual Boiler space, they beer up and boiler up and beer down. That a fan was in there, and he made this observation that I thought was kind of crazy. And I'm normally the one coming up with the crazy observations. So I took it and ran with it. And I wish I could shout this person out, because I am at the point where I agree with it. The reason I bring up the Steph Curry picture is what this fan said was, he feels like this is the college version of the Golden State Warriors. And at first I was like, chill out. They're the greatest shooting team of all time. But I think what he meant was the way they move the ball, the way they move off of the ball. And that is what you see with this team. And all of them can score. That's also a Golden State thing, where everybody on the floor is a threat to score. They are all moving without the basketball, and they're all connected, and they're all selfless. They're all giving up the basketball. They're all great passers. And you see the way they break down teams on the pick and roll. You see the way they adjust off a 2-3 zone and go heavy on one side, and all these different checkmates, because they have such threats. Yes, the Golden State Warriors play through a point guard because he has so much gravity. They all collapse on Steph, and it's this trickle down. Klay Thompson, they collapse on him because they don't want him to shoot. And then it trickles down to an open shot. Well, with this team, it's the same thing, just different parts. Zach Edey, extreme gravity that opens up a pass, kick. Now Mason Gillis is wide open in the corner. Braden Smith drives past the guy, kick, wide open. Is it crazy? I'm sure there's been plenty of college basketball teams that have moved the rock like these guys do. But it just feels like it's unique the way they share the ball, move the ball, and play on offense. Chris, I'll start with you, and then I'll let Bobby take it, and then we'll probably kick you guys out of here. But what are you seeing in that regard? Is this a ridiculous statement I'm trying to say, or do you see where I'm going with it? And the fan that said it first and foremost.
I see where you're going with it. Obviously, that's extreme high praise, and you're talking about the Golden State Warriors. But I think that this team is giving up good shots for great shots. You talk about the play, Braden Smith drove, kicked it to somebody else. They kicked to Ethan Moore. Ethan Moore is open for a wing 3, but he passes to Fletcher in the corner for a wide open shot. Just that connectivity, that sacrifice for the betterment of Purdue. That's what I see. Jay Bill said, they don't care. It's like egoless, selfless basketball. They just want to win. They're out there playing for each other. They're all laying it on the line. And, it's a beautiful thing to watch when everybody's touching the ball. It's moving. Somebody's closing out. The guys attacking. They help. They pass. They attack again. Pass, wide open jump shot. They knock it down. So you can see, kind of what, this person was saying. But it's obviously different because obviously the NBA is a very guard-dominant game. And Steph just brings so much attention just because you have to guard him from the parking lot. But
do you think Zach Edey is that attention, though? While they play different positions, the amount of gravity he demands, do you think that's the same kind of, like, everybody's collapsing on him?
I would say Sometimes, but sometimes they just let him play one-on-one. And then
That's probably the best way to play him, right?
I mean, when you go double team him, if you have a 7-foot guy guarding him, and then you bring a 6'8" guy, he turns around, puts the ball above his head, you're really not doing anything. I mean, he can see exactly where he wants to pass. Maybe you'll get a deflection. Maybe you'll throw a bad pass. But you're not really stopping him from – the only thing you're doing is making him pass. But he's still throwing the ball exactly where he wants. Maybe if you could bring, 2 Zach Edeys to come and double Zach Edey, then you'd have yourself, you might get some deflections and get some steals and get some easy baskets. But I think what Purdue is going to see a lot moving forward is they're going to see a lot of zone just to do what they can to cover up. You see they got a little bit stagnant. They slowed down in that game versus Duke a little bit. And I think that's what they're going to see, especially when offensively they start clicking. Other teams are going to go zone and just try to slow it down, try to take them out of their rhythm, and, make them take contested jump shots late in the shot clock and, try to get the ball out of Zach's hands, because I'd play him one-on-one, maybe dig down or choose one guy and just run and try to get him when he's dribbling, because if he turns and sees where he wants to go, it's going to be a dime, and then it's just them playing off of that situation. But I don't know. What you think, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly see the Warriors thing to some degree. I think if I had to make an NBA comparison, it would probably be, as far as a team that had really good ball movement and making the extra pass and all that stuff, I'd probably go maybe that Tim Duncan Spurs team, where they were playing the Heat a couple years in the finals, where they had all those dudes out there that were swing, shooting threes. Obviously, Tim Duncan being a big, a little bit more of a comparison there with Zach being a big. Tim was a little bit on the end of his career and wasn't quite the dominant force that Zach is maybe on the low block right now in college. But as far as that, like, super great ball movement, everybody out there can make a three, kind of reminds me a little bit of that Spurs team. But, yeah, as far as how you defend Purdue, Zach is, he makes it a problem because of some of the things Chris said. I mean, everything Chris said. He's not a black hole down there, which is so crucial, and he's a willing passer, and he's a good passer. He's not Travion.
He's a great passer.
He's a great passer. I mean, he's not Travion doing flashy stuff, which I think a lot of times a great passer is associated with flashy stuff behind the back, whatever. But he's a great passer at keeping things simple, and Zach has really started to
be strong with the ball.
And, like, master the ability to be simple. Like, okay, you're playing me one-on-one. I will do 1-2 dribbles max. If you ride my left shoulder, I'll drop step and I'll lay it in with my left hand. If you don't give me major resistance with the left shoulder, I'm just shooting a jump hook over my left shoulder with the right hand, and I'm making that an extremely high clip. And I think what we're seeing this year is, even when you have a dude like the cat at West Virginia, big barrel-chested dude, able to force Zach a little further away from the basket than he wanted, Zach's developed that touch to where, like, okay, I'm 9-10 feet out, it's a bucket. Like, so he's certainly becoming a massive problem for teams because, as Chris said, like, it's just pick your poison, and he can just see over double teams. He can distribute. So you're really going to have to mix looks. You're going to have to maybe just decide to say, like, screw it. We're going to see if these other dudes for Purdue can make multiple threes after multiple threes. We'll try to rotate as much as we can to a Fletcher, Lawyer, the most proven of the guys out there, and maybe make some of the other guys who are less proven beat you. Because, if you play one-on-one, if you don't have someone who's as big as Zach, which basically no one does. I mean, we saw against Kofi Coburn last year, Zach was able to score relatively effectively. It's an interesting thing because analytically, I remember some of those Isaac Haas teams late in the year. I felt like teams kind of decided to say, like, all right, we'll just let Isaac Haas get 30. We're not going to let Dakota Mathias and PJ Thompson, Ryan Klein, and some of these dudes shoot horse shots. And I felt like at times, to some degree, that worked. Like, Michigan would do that, then Michigan was able to flip it with, like, Mo Wagner and put Isaac in major binds. Obviously, Zach being a little bit more mobile than Isaac has helped, not only defensively, but then, Zach's ability to pass offensively maybe a little bit further than Isaac was helps as well. So it's going to be really the zone call is interesting, because then, it gives Zach a different look. You have guys all around him, can maybe get in there and dig a little bit. It's not a traditional like, okay, I'm either doubled or we're not running our post entry offense where I know where everybody's cutting and going. It gives Zach something else to think about, I suppose. But we even got in, against Duke, we got the ball when they went zone. We got the ball inside to Zach like the first 2 possessions, and I think he actually missed both shots, but they were both like really good looks that he gets against man to man that he makes a lot. So, and because we have so many good shooters, we certainly could torch zones as well. Like if you play a bad zone against us, we could absolutely annihilate you. So
somebody highlighted it on Twitter on one of the plays where they overloaded the right side on the zone and opened Brayden up for a 3 in the corner, and he knocked it down. So, it's a chess match, and it's punch counter punch mentality when you want to play winning basketball or any sport for that matter. You got to know how to counter. So we're seeing that so far with this team. We could make you two go all night long about how this team has just an amazing potential, and there's so many different topics I'd love to hit with you guys, but I promised I'd keep it short. Chris has already gone long. Bobby, you got off a plane at what time? 4 a.m?
Yeah, I think I got back to my house by about 5-ish. Yeah, we got off around 4:15, 4:30, then got the luggage and all that stuff. But
I mean, the fact that you were willing to come on tonight means a lot. It shows your passion for this team as well. But I don't want to keep you anymore because I know you got, both of you guys have beautiful families to attend to, and you got to get back on a flight tomorrow, Bobby. So we appreciate all your coverage as per usual. We'll be listening to the pregame show leading up to Purdue, Florida State here on Wednesday. And Chris, thanks again for coming on, your second time on. Hopefully we're not wearing your welcome out too much with our invites and me bugging you in the DMs, but we'd certainly love to have you on, some more going forward and hear your thoughts as it goes. So I won't bug you too much, but it's kind of like Bobby. Once he
reels you in,
yeah, you're stuck. You're stuck. So you may not get the stalker cam like I give Bobby, but I am kind of relentless. So, but I'll leave you guys alone for a little bit. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's a historic week for Purdue men's basketball, and it looks like another really fun season ahead of us as Purdue has now re-entered the top 5 teams in the country at number 5. So thanks again to both of you, and we'll catch you guys here soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Catch you on the flip side.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
What is that? Thanks
Bobby,
again.
Bobby, that Notre Dame, his Notre Dame insignia there kind of scared me there. What? I didn't see what it was until later, and I was like, "Did he wear a Notre Dame shirt on the show?"
I wore a Notre Dame IU reverse jacket. It's we used to go. Me and my family used to go to the Crossroads every year, and we made a shirt called the Cross. We made a group, a text group with all my family called the Crossroads Crew. And now that they canceled the Crossroads, I mean, now this shirt is like it's not the same, but so there is a Purdue logo here, so Purdue fans don't attack me too bad.
Well, my guy Andy Rathjen, who I grew up with, and my baseball coach when I was in Little League, he says you're stuck with Briggs now. He meant Braggs, but he can't spell, so he knows how it works. Diehard Purdue fan too. So we'll let you go, Bobby. Get some rest. Thank you again for coming on. You're a good man. We'll catch up with you soon at Mackey Arena.
No problem, boys. Enjoy.
Right, Bobby. You too. All right. Go to bed, Bobby. We appreciate you coming on and appreciate everyone's patience. So now we're going to move on to the second segment of our show. I wanted to invite some people on that have welcomed us, me and Kraig, that being said, into their house and the coverage they do for Purdue sports and Purdue basketball on Twitter and everywhere else on YouTube. I'll let them plug where they're coming from and what they're doing. But, we here at Brags in the Stands and something I take seriously and personally is building that community. And I want to make sure I'm always building bridges. So these guys have been really warm and welcoming to us and having really, really fun and interesting conversations here early in the season for Purdue basketball. So I wanted them to invite them into our house now that we finally got another show off the ground after our Matt Painter interview, Craig. So without further ado, we're going to bring in Habitual Boiler from Beer Up, Boiler Down. I butchered it earlier, the name of his media company, but how you doing tonight?
I'm all right, man. It's Boiler Up, Beer Down. We're never going to say
I butchered it again, didn't I?
That's all right. That's all right. We like
Boiler Up, Beer Up, Boiler Down.
No.
Yeah. Other way. I know. I meant to mess it up that time.
When we started applying for media credentials, we were like, man, we should change our name because this does not look very professional because we're just a bunch of amateurs. So we started calling ourselves BUBD. That sounds a little bit better.
Yeah, clean it up for the.
I gotta say, the quality of your show just went way down after those two guys left.
Way.
And then you
and this is a huge moment, right? Because you're incognito on Twitter here. You are Habitual Boiler. And so I don't know if you've ever done a face reveal. So this is your first ever face reveal.
This is the first ever. Yeah, no, there's very few people in the world that know who runs that account. And, you might not know my name, but you see my face now.
Yes, that's true.
Is the FBI like going to knock on the door in 15 minutes? Or
who knows, man? Who knows? Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Hey, Kraig, this is a hell of a production. You do a really, really good job with this whole thing. And part of the reason I wanted to be on was just to learn this whole streaming service. So good job doing this. This is
I've learned from different people through my Bears coverage. There's Habitual Boiler if the witness protection program bust him out. But I've learned from some different people, kind of the tricks of the trade through my Chicago Bears coverage and doing different things. And fairly easy once you get the hang of it. If a caveman like me can figure it out, anyone can figure it out. But again, we appreciate you, welcoming us into your spaces. And I always feel like it's always best when everybody promotes each other because, everybody can eat. It's not one of those things. I think there's certain industries with different sports teams where it's very competitive and, you got to shit on the other guy's opinion and different things like that. I'm not like that. I always keep it fun and I'm always going to promote other people's work. Lift as you climb is saying David Kaplan, a huge media guy in Chicago sports, taught me a long time ago. So that's what I'll continue to do. I've kind of jumped into this Purdue stuff the last 5 years and everyone's been very welcoming to me. And that means a lot to me.
Oh no. Like I said, we're just a bunch of amateur fans that want to
absolutely
have and elsewhere. One other thing I got to say, we got to get you some Purdue stuff for your wall. I mean, I don't hate the Bears, but we need some Purdue stuff back.
Yeah, that's true. Normally I have the Purdue stuff up. I forgot to do it because I'm so busy. I was just doing a Bears podcast before this. I do have a Jaden Ivey jersey and a Sasha jersey that normally I have hanging proudly, but today I was kind of scrambling to get things done. So you get the Purdue sweater for now. We can talk about other things in the background later. But without further ado, we'll bring on the next couple guests we have on. Kraig. I think maybe his internet crashed or something. He'll be back here shortly. But I want to bring on Joe Jackson and Aiden Kunst. I hope I didn't butcher your last name, Aiden.
No, you're good. You're good.
I appreciate it. These are, again, more guys that cover Purdue sports, specifically Purdue basketball, as far as the stuff that I'm watching and listening to with these guys. And they hold spaces after games, just like Habitual Boiler does. And really, I feel like I was excited to bring everybody on tonight. I want you guys to always feel like you're welcome. But I feel like, some of the knowledge you guys have with the X's and O's in basketball certainly supersedes my knowledge of the game. I've played it and I've watched it my whole life, but I think there's a little bit of a coaching, perspective that comes from it and some different insight that I really enjoy that you bring to the table. It certainly helps me as a fan. So I wanted to bring you guys on tonight. How are we doing?
Good. Just soaking in kind of the Purdue wins, the aftermath of it. Got the thread out today, which is a lot of fun rewatching, just kind of enjoying the good parts again. So
yeah,
I'm good. Hey, tough act to follow, Braggs, with Bobby Buckets
and
for real. Kramer in there, huh?
Well, those guys are great, and we have Bobby on all the time, and Chris, this is his second time on, and maybe going forward when we have, a chance to do a bigger roundtable where they have all. I mean, I've had Bobby on where he's talk for like an hour and a half because he's like me. He doesn't know how to stop talking. So, I try to keep him to 20 minutes, and then Bobby's answer to a question is 8.5 minutes. So what am I supposed to do there? So maybe, in the future we can all come on and you guys can fire some questions at them, because I've asked enough questions to Bobby to make his head spin. So I know he don't want to hear from me anymore because I bug him enough. But no, you guys are great. I think everybody brings different things to the table. Obviously, former players and color analysts for Purdue Men's Basketball Radio is fun, but you guys bring great perspectives. So tough.
You got to save the big hitters for the second part of the show, because you probably already lost all your viewers by now. Now that we're
no, you know what? And we're going to get right into it, because I think as soon as we start talking about this stuff, and I don't know what happened with Kraig, but as soon as we start talking some more of this, because there's a lot more to unpack when it comes to what happened over the last week, I think people are going to realize that just how great the three of you guys are when it comes to your guys' particular coverage of this. So, to me, it's like, how could we not go live tonight and talk about this? I almost was going to wait till after the Florida State game, and Kraig was like, no, dude, they just got to top 5 in the country. One of the biggest jumps for any team in the AP from 24 to 5, biggest jump in Purdue's basketball history. It was a special week overall for Purdue sports in general. So why not come on, chop it up, and somewhat celebrate this and look forward to what's going to happen here going forward in the next couple weeks and over the next couple months. I'm down to talk about little stuff or big picture or what's transpired. But let's get right into it. The one thing that I wanted to ask Bobby and Chris, but I just didn't want to take up too much of their time, and it's just such a loaded question. And Kraig, I think, is kind of in the front lines against this question, but it's unavoidable when it comes to the comparison of last year's team versus this year's team. Kraig has put out some good stuff. He put a good thread out the other day about, there's no reason to denigrate last year's team by, admiring and talking up what this year's team is doing. But at the same time, that's kind of the first thing that's coming to fans, mouths when they're talking about this team. I watched Brian Newbert's video breakdown after the Duke win last night on YouTube. That was the first thing he went to, was comparisons from last year's team to this year's team. When you guys look at this, and I'll start with you, Habitual Boiler, and then we'll work it around the room to Joe and Aiden. When you look at these teams and where they stand right now, where we were last year at this time after they got back from Connecticut, highest scoring team, maybe had some flaws defensively, and then you look at this team and see how they play defense a little more connected. Yes, they don't have the lottery pick, but they move the things on offense that are just as explosive without maybe that lottery pick, or a guy like Travion Williams that has NBA potential as well. When you see that, when you think about that, where do you stand as far as your comparisons and how you feel about this team compared to where you were at this point last year with last year's team?
Well, I think Kraig's right. You don't want to denigrate last year's team, but as a fan, it's hard not to compare the two. And you kind of answered it yourself there, Braggs. That I think the huge difference is obviously we don't have the top end talent, but we've got 6, 7, 8 guys with extremely high basketball IQ compared to last year. You see it in their spacing, you see it in their moving off the ball, you see it in their defense and the help defense and recovering off of rotations. I don't want to fall into the trap that Kraig probably doesn't want to fall into. You did see a lot of standing around a little bit last year, and I'm not blaming them for that. They had they had a lottery pick that could just go get a bucket. I think that's just the major difference in this year's team and last year's team. When that lottery pick couldn't get that bucket, then we were in scramble mode.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you can't blame them for going, ISO high screen pick and roll for Jaden Ivey. He's dynamic. Look at the things that he's able to do. He sliced up Illinois at Mackey Arena last year. But, you're absolutely right. This team, the way they share the ball and make that extra pass is something I feel like that does separate them offensively. Joe, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Aiden, and then Kraig can give his counter to all of these thoughts as far as when it comes to comparisons. But Joe, where do you stand on all of this and your thoughts on this team?
It's tough. It's tough for me just because last year was the first year that I started my Twitter account. Really started. I followed Purdue basketball the whole time that I've been here at Purdue, but last year was the first year that I really just fell in love with the team, and so I know I'm always just going to naturally want to defend it a little more. And I think it is fair to compare if it's done right. I think there's a way to compare without bashing last year's team that, lost 6-7 games or whatever, got to number 1 for the first time in history. Did a lot of great things. And for the first 2 months, at least, they were the most fun team in college basketball to watch. I do agree that this year there's a little bit more ball movement, and it seems kind of more like a cohesive unit. Last year kind of felt more like pieces were tried to be put together, whereas this year, pieces fit together really well, which is just going to make it more, it's going to make it look better. But I do think overall, there's a way to compare without actually bashing last year's team, because I think part of what comes with it for last year's team is the the hindsight bias of sorts of they fell short. Obviously, we can all say that. Thanks, Matt Sis.
You do great work. I mean, not to
I appreciate
to take you off your thought, but the shout outs are deserved. I think you had a different Twitter name last year when you were doing
I started as a Purdue basketball. Actually, I started as an analytics account because I'm a stats major, econ major, and I'm very much numbers oriented. And so I started as that, but then I kind of was really starting to get into the X's and O's. So I was there's a few NBA accounts that I follow that really do it, and they're amazing at it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to try these video threads for Purdue. Let's see what happens. It's just kind of taken off from there. So
yeah, you do a great job, and I appreciated them last year because just following this team over the last 4 years and the nuance of the way Matt Painter runs his system and his coaching, it's great. And you really put a spotlight on that, and you do really great work. So people should follow you on Twitter without question. So like I said, the shout outs are deserved. Aiden, what are you thinking here as far as this discussion with the comparison of last year's team versus this year's team?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of what you guys said. But I just think this year's team has a real identity. They know who they are. And that identity has really been shaped by Painter. When you have those top end talented guys, they can get away with a little bit more, and so it's okay if Jaden Ivey's shooting a step back 35-footer. That's not the worst shot in the world, but at the end of the day, it's also not the most efficient. I think this year's team has a real modern identity in that they only shoot from the paint, or if they're getting a rhythm 3. I mean, that's mostly been what this team's done so far. And I think last year there was a bit more inefficient shots, just stuff you have to live with because of the talent mixed in there. So I think this potentially could be a more efficient offensive team just for that reason. And then I just think defensively, you've got 5 guys who are really connected. At times last year, there was times where that wasn't the case, and there's still probably be times this year where that's not the case. That's the nature of the game. So I totally agree with Kraig. Last year's team should always hold a special place in everyone's heart. They were so fun to watch. And when those highs were high, like that Illinois game, like the shot we got on the screen right now, I mean, it was an unbelievable ride. The highs may not be quite as electric this year, but I think we're going to fall in love with the consistency of this team, and we kind of already are doing that. So, yeah,
and as Kraig has pointed out, the irony of that play is that it wasn't supposed to be a Jaden Ivey shot, and that kind of was a microcosm of at times what that Purdue offense was. They couldn't get it down to the post. They just scramble, give it to Jaden, and let Jaden make magic happen. This team, like you said, it's a little more deliberate in what they're trying to do, and potentially could be a little more consistent. We'll see as the year goes on. Kraig, I wanted to let you go last because, as I said, you kind of were the first to this. At the start of the season, people were like, "Oh, this team's going to be more fun." because there was just so much tension surrounding the fan base with last year's team, a team that was in the top 10 for the entire season, from start to finish, from all the highs and all the lows, and they lost 7 or 8 or whatever games, and most of them were on buzzer beaters, and every team was court storming. I brought that up so many times last year. Every team that beat Purdue was storming the court like they had just beaten the Warriors. And that to me was surprising. I just, from the start of watching Sasha's careers, which is where I started as a fan, to see them evolve into this top 10 team in the country, that IU, who is known for trying to say Purdue is their little brother, they're storming the court because they can't believe they just beat Purdue. And so, to me, but at the same time, every time they lost, you found this vitriol with the fan base and the team, the things they didn't like about this guy or that guy. And then by the end, when they lost to St. Peter's, it kind of all came down on its head. And that's the nature of, a fan. It's short for fanatic. And so, to an extent, you can't blame people for being reactionary. But now we go into this season and it starts with, oh, this team's going to be more fun and likable, and the expectations aren't going to be as big, so we can enjoy it as the hunters and not the hunted. And now they've won these 3 huge games. They're right back where they were last year in the top 5, fighting to be number 1. They got 8 first-place votes. They could have been number 1 in the country again and been right back to becoming the hunted, but it still feels like there's more of an affinity for this team, for fans to kind of wrap their arms around and give a little more nice press clippings or nice comments on the Twitter, sphere, where it can be very toxic. Kraig, you talked about a great point with, it hurts recruiting when fans attack some of the former players, because we need new players to want to come in, and they're watching a lot of this stuff on social media. I thought that was a great point, and I want you to kind of elaborate on just that entire thought process when we compare last year's team to this year's team. I know that was a really long setup. We'll be here all night.
Yeah, we're getting a little feedback somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where, but I think, my point was that it isn't that we can't ever compare. And we could compare this team back to the Baby Boilers if we wanted, or we can compare this team to whatever team we wanted. Obviously, that one's in the recent memory that we're looking at. But for me, there's just a way to do that without denigrating last year's team. There's a way to do that without talking last year's team down, without attacking individual players. And my issue was, you seeing some posts and some comments about, and I'm so glad X isn't here anymore because it was all about them, and it was all about the shots they were taking, or finally we don't have lazy players on defense, or this type of thing. And I just don't think there's any place for that. You can never convince me that last year's team didn't care. You can never convince me that last year's team didn't try and didn't give it everything that they had. It's just a different makeup, and it's a completely different team. At the same time, I think there's this thought process amongst a lot of the Purdue fan base that they love it when Purdue does it without necessarily high-level NBA talent guys for whatever reason. It's that hard work, American dream. If you try hard enough and you work hard enough, you can be anything, and you can make yourself a national championship contender. Well, I got bad news, because there hasn't been a team that's won an NCAA championship without an NBA draft pick in a long friggin' time. So you have to have those type of players. And the ideal thing is that you get those players and that they buy in, and they do all the little things right as well along the way. And you want that total package, but you got to work those guys in through. And I think there's going to come a time this year, if we're going to make comparisons, there's going to come a time this year where somebody figures out how to guard Zach a little bit and slow him down, and they figure out how to shut down some sets. And there's going to be a time where you wish you had a dude you could just give the ball to and say, go get me 20. I don't care how you do it. Go get me 20. I don't know that we found that guy yet on this team necessarily. If that's the one little thing I'd pick apart, I don't know. David Jenkins is showing some ability to just put the ball in his hands, go get a shot. But I don't know that it's quite as, it's not what Jaden could do. So I just struggle with when it goes over the line of just a general comparison to really start attacking and denigrating some of those players, especially individual players from that team from last year.
Yeah, and we got Troy Shire in the chat, and he says 6 games in, let's compare in February. And I see where you're coming from, but as I said, I just feel like it's an unavoidable part of the conversation because fans are going there, media members are going there already. I respect the hell out of Brian Newbert, and I enjoy his perspective and everything he brings to the table with his coverage, and he went there. So I just think it's
again, there's a right way to do it. I shared an article that did an in-depth comparison. I forget who wrote it now. It was somebody that I didn't recognize right away. And they did a fantastic job of breaking the two teams down, comparing the differences between those two teams and how both were successful without slandering, any piece of last year's team. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay, so we did the, I set it up, but I want this to feel more like a conversation, just like we do in Spaces. So I don't want anybody here to feel like you guys got to wait your turn to talk. If you want to interject, go for it. I'm just going to kind of set the table, and then I want to see if we can get to a point where we're just talking, because I don't want you guys to all feel like you have to wait your turn. You don't. Whoever's watching is going to enjoy this conversation no matter how it flows. So, it's a little tricky with the 5 of us, but it helps when you can see each other on video as opposed to sometimes on Spaces where you're just kind of waiting for each person. So, Joe, I want to start with you. I didn't get a chance to listen to your guys' Spaces after the Duke game because I was doing Bears coverage, and I came home and watched it later without knowing the results. So I didn't get to hear anybody's perspective on this. So I really want to hear your guys's, and then like I said, I just want everybody to just start kicking it around and interjecting as they want. But your perspective on the X's and O's end of it and how they were able to beat Duke, by breaking them down. You can go to either side of the court, whichever you were most interested or intrigued with.
I'm going to start with the defensive end. I think, holding them scoreless for the last 7 minutes, and it was only 1 point in the last 9:21 or something like that. A lot of that was Caleb First to me. He was excellent, just excellent on defense throughout the entire second half. They were, he was the matchup for Filipowski. He was the only one on Purdue with the size and speed to at least, contest shots. In the first half, Filipowski's, he's good enough that he got a couple 10-foot little runner things to go. And it's like, all right, if he hits those, he hits those. But specifically when they went pick and roll, they were trying to get Filipowski. They were having Filipowski be the one setting the screen. And First just did a really good job of hedging and recovering right away. I think Filipowski only had 2 points in the second half, and him and Roach, those were the two kind of main scorers, at least starting out. But even with beyond First, he's hedging. There's still a moment in time where that role is kind of open, and I felt like the rest of the defense did well, kind of rotating and cutting it off until First got back. And that's just kind of more of a testament to Purdue's defense in general this year from what we've seen. I felt like for the most part, the defensive rotations have been really, really good. There's, sometimes Purdue does get into that scramble defense, but it's felt controlled. And it's felt like everybody has a purpose and they know where they're going. And then the other aspect of the defense has been Zach Edey and drop coverage has been much, much improved. That was, I wrote some articles over the summer, even on Twitter. Everything was like, hey, teams are going to put Zach Edey in action constantly, and he's going to have to figure out something. It helps when, this game was Lively, last game was Watson, where he can, he's letting them shoot. He let Lively put up 2 open threes, and he bricked both. I think Watson put up 1, and in the Gonzaga game, he bricked it.
Which is normally the opposite. When Purdue normally does that, when they let a guy that has a terrible shooting percentage, they have their career day against Purdue. That's at least been my observation the last few years.
Yeah, no, for sure. We and Daniel have even talked about that. Like, the 3-point percentage defense is really, really good, and like that's going to regress at some point. Teams are going to knock down shots, but then one quick thing on offense and then kind of bounce around or whatever is Duke went to the zone and Purdue stopped scoring for a bit. When I was watching live, I was like, man, this, just doesn't look good. But when I kind of watched it back today, I was like, oh, they're actually getting pretty good looks still. They just kind of they just couldn't hit for about a 3-minute stretch. The very first possession, Edey had like an off balance 12-foot hook, but aside from that, it felt like they weren't actually that bad of shots. Like in the normal flow of the offense, it's like, oh, I'm cool with that shot, at least from a process standpoint, which is, kind of all you can ask for. And then eventually First gets thrown in that high post and then just kind of tears it apart a couple times in a row, and then they have to move out of it. So,
yeah,
sure.
Hey, Joe, I want to say, first of all, I absolutely love what you do on Twitter.
Thank you.
I look forward to it after every game. I didn't realize you were the stats guy. I'm pretty sure I sent you direct messages last year asking you for stat numbers when you were doing the stat stuff. So
I do remember
it all comes full circle now. So yeah. I appreciate that. But yeah, I thought when they threw, as soon as they went to that zone, I'm like, put First in the middle, put First in the middle, put First in the middle. And then it seemed like as soon as they did, it was like, okay, we got it figured out now. Thought they got what they needed to, got good looks.
Yeah, and I think one of the things with zone that I've heard Painter talk about is you can really run a lot of your man stuff against it, really, and it ends up kind of working out. Like, for example, on that big time Lawyer 3 where they kind of overloaded the zone, that was set up like set they go to a lot where Lawyer will run off a double screen. You think you're throwing it to Lawyer there, and then the 4 will pop up and Edey is already sealed in. So you reverse it to the 4, and now you got a quick duck in from Edey. And so they set it up like that. This time when they go back to First or Morton, whoever it was in the middle of the zone, he looks into Edey, one fake, kick out to Lawyer for an open 3. So I think, I'll tell you this, guys, like I think Painter has been as sharp as I've ever seen him this year, just executing these teams to death. And maybe it's because he has a team that is going to execute at a really high level. And maybe it's because PK 85, these teams are really short scouts, like especially Gonzaga had a 1-day scout, Duke had a 1 and 2-day scout, whatever the case may be. You're having to prepare for Edey, plus all the false action and all the stuff that we know Painter does. So that's something maybe to keep in mind of like, okay, teams will be able to scout this, maybe be able to do it a little bit better. Like Kraig said earlier, like maybe they'll be able to take us out of our stuff. Maybe they'll kind of work to get around Zach a little bit more. One other thing on zone, I just looking ahead, I think Florida State would be silly not to play a lot of zone with their length. So looking forward to that game. I think you'll see a lot of zone from them. But their problem has just been they just can't score. They have really, really struggled to put the ball in the basket. So
don't you think part of, talking about Painter doing his best coaching job or really been on it, don't you think part of that is the tools that he has at his disposal right now, though? Like he's got a point guard. I mean, this Braden Smith is the best, truest point guard I think Painter's ever had. The only thing I can think of was maybe Lou Jack, way back when a little bit then, but I don't think Lou Jack couldn't shoot like Braden. And you have a 2 guard with size that can shoot, but can also get to the rim. You got a 3 guard that's excellent with the ball, pretty high 3-point shooting percentage, but doesn't shoot a lot of them. And then you got multiple 4s and a backup 5 that can play the 4 that can all do a lot of different things. I just think he has a lot of different tools at every position that he can ask to do different things and know that he can. Whereas in some previous years, there's only so much you were going to be able to ask No Gel to do. Eric wasn't the shooter that Braden was, that's where I'm at on that.
Yeah, I think he's assembled the perfect modern basketball team, right? Like all these guys shot fake every time they touch the ball. I mean, that's a hallmark of this team. Every time these guys get the ball, they turn towards the rim and draw that help in. I mean, it really is a team of guys who know how to manipulate help defense. And then obviously you're surrounded by the most dominant force in college basketball. I mean, so he's assembled a team that is just perfect for modern basketball. It's a bunch of snipers around the guy who will get the easiest looks at the rim in the country. I mean, I think you're right. He has a great roster. It works really well. I think the bench, when they're all 5 out there together, has had some struggles, but they look very good, especially when they're surrounded by some of the starters. And I think Braden, he's an absolute stud. I know Braden pretty well. I've watched him for years now. And I mean, this is a guy who was he told me he was ready to commit to Indiana Wesleyan at one point. And it's just an AI school. I mean, the guy he was underlooked and underrated, and I think Painter saw something in him that a lot of people didn't, obviously. So.
Well, and it goes to show you a guy like that. He's on a high school team, so he can only do what makes him great so much because the other guys on the high school team aren't going to Purdue or IU or wherever. They're going to go to college and do what they're doing, but they're not playing ball like Brayden is. So you put Brayden in a team with Zach Edey and other players that he can, get the most out of what he does great, and that's passing the ball and playing off of pick and roll and manipulating that. Then you truly start to see the greatness. Habitual Boiler, I know this is a crowded room, and I wanted to ask you, with my thought with Chris and Bobby earlier about this it was on your spaces that a fan said they remind me of like a college version of the Golden State Warriors. And like, we're talking about a bunch of snipers and passes. I like the comparison because when they first came on, they were just so fresh in the way they moved the ball. I know it's a ridiculous statement, and Ant Wright is already trying to bury me on Twitter for my Matt Painter's the best coach in the country. And I'm all gas, no brakes. That's who I am. I'm going to gas my guys up. But I believe Matt Painter is the best coach in the country, and I think there is some validity to this statement. I'm not saying they're the dang 73-9 Warriors, but I think the comparison is interesting and intriguing because of the way they move the basketball, the way everyone has the potential to score, and the way they demand certain players on this team demand double teams, which creates breakdowns all the way across the floor when they're playing offense. Am I ridiculous for saying this? Should I shut up and stop tweeting nonsense and stop embarrassing my guy Kraig, or should I just keep shit tweeting like I do every day?
Dude, we're just fans, and you can tweet whatever the hell you want. We're 6 games in. Think about where we were to start the season. We were talking, and we all believed it, that Purdue was a middle of the pack Big Ten team. That might be a potential bubble team. Hopefully, we'll get in the NCAA tournament, win some games. In 6 freaking games, you went from that to being a potential 1 seed. And nobody had that happen, right? Nobody on here, nobody listening, nobody on Twitter truly thought that could happen in 6 games. Maybe by the end of the year, but then they'd probably be lying if they told you that too. So, yeah, there's some special stuff that's going to happen with this team. But also, flashback to last November, like Martha the Moth Lady was all over me today about being national champions of November. And, that's not wrong. We got a long season ahead of us. We're playing 2 true freshmen. We're really young. And one of the things I like to do after games is go to the opponent's Twitter and get lost in it and see what they're saying. And a lot of the Duke fans were saying, well, this Duke team's talented, but they're really young. And I'm thinking, no, Purdue's younger than Duke. And Duke's loaded full of 5 stars. So, maybe our guys hit their freshman wall later in the year, but I think we can be excited. But I hate this. Killer used to say this joke, but manage your expectations.
Vegas bumped the expectations. They went from 8-1 to win the Big Ten to 5-1, and I haven't checked their Final Four odds, but I guarantee they spiked after they beat Duke. So they were long odds. I think they were 55-1 before the Duke game, and I think they dropped down to like 28-1 or something like that.
Yeah. One thing I'll say about the team, and I took some notes, is like, and I know former Purdue teams has been full of winners too, but if you think about it, I think between the team that's there, I think I counted 7 or 8 state titles between them all. We have 2 Indiana Master basketballs, 3 runner-up, 1 Pennsylvania Mr. basketball, and lots of wins in high school, right? So there's just dudes that know how to win, and what wins you games? Guys that are winners, and it's that plain and simple. Guys that know how to win.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because what a reflection this team is about the state of Indiana and its high school basketball, right? I mean, such good players who know what they're doing. You think back to like just the freshmen. They are ready for this moment because they've always had to be the guy, kind of like what Bragg said. Like Fletcher Lawyer played on an Indy Heat team. He went down to Peach Jam, was one of the leading scorers at the event, playing in front of LeBron James, playing in front of all those top teams.
Brayden Smith, played for Grand Park Premier AAU by himself, pretty much no one else there. It was his dad's team. So these guys have had the ball in their hands for as long as they can remember. They know how to play winning basketball. They've won at the highest levels. And now you're sticking those guys, like Braggs, to your point, you're now sticking those guys into an ecosystem where everybody else knows how to play. Everybody else can shoot 40+%. Zach always says it, right? Everybody else but him can shoot 40+% from three. And you got Zach in there. Like Braden Smith was playing with a 6'4" big last year, who they ran a ton of pick and roll, but now it's 7'4" big. Fletcher Lawyer, he just never played with anybody that size. Like, it's just sticking these winning players, and when they all come together, really, really good results happens, as we see.
I call it basketball poetry. I put up the jerseys. It was the fastest I've ever done that.
Nice.
Just so
nice.
I gotta make sure I'm repping my guys. But no, it's like basketball poetry. I can't be more. I always get overhyped. Last year at this time, I asked Bobby after the Florida State beatdown. I was like giggling after the game because they beat him by 30. I was like, how is this team gonna lose? Because they just look.
We actually broke Florida State.
Yeah,
I think they're like 1-50 since then.
Right. And let's hope that continues here on Wednesday, as they take them on for the last time in this Big Ten ACC Challenge, while the TV rights move over to Fox for the Big Ten, and that's why ESPN will no longer have this Big Ten ACC Challenge. I know everyone's really upset not having to play Florida State every year, but go ahead.
You got you told jump in, so I'm jumping in.
Jump in.
You asked.
No,
yeah.
I talk enough. This is my second show of the night.
We were talking. Somebody was talking about we likely had them all mid in the Big Ten. I just want to let you know I had them 5th, so I was right, just not 5th in the country. So I want to know honestly, when you guys made preseason predictions, I'm going to be honest. I had us 5th in the Big Ten. Where did everybody else have us?
I have a spreadsheet that I'm pulling up right now. I believe it was 4th.
All right, you were one better than me.
Joe can vouch for me. I had him 3rd. I was as big a Braden Smith believer as anybody since I've known him. So I was a little biased there, but it's worked out.
I did have Purdue 4th, and that's with just for some reason I bought into Michigan. I like wings. Jet Howard's a really fun wing, and Terrence Williams is a really fun wing, and I bought into them, and I shouldn't have, but I did have them 4th.
Yeah, I didn't have rankings, so I'll just say I had them at first, but I did not. No, I didn't have them. I can't remember. We did a CHGO bets show, and that we're talking Big Ten basketball on there, and we were talking about the odds. Who were the good teams to put money on? And I think Purdue to win the Big Ten was like plus 2,800 or something like that. And I don't remember exactly. I have to go back and watch it to say for sure, but I was just talking about who had the best odds. And I was just like, man, Illinois, Indiana, not getting much meat on the bone with a bet like that. And I'm not a gambling guy, but I was looking at Purdue and I'm like, if it's a down year like everyone was saying it was supposed to be to start the year, and I think Big Ten so far this season has rewrote that theory. I was like, Purdue is certainly a team you'd have to consider. They still have Zach Edey and things of that nature, that are difference makers in the Big Ten. So, big men always dominate when it comes to the Big Ten. So it'll be interesting to see how teams like Illinois, that doesn't necessarily have that traditional big, do as, more of what they thought was a preseason favorite. So, no, I didn't have any rankings. I really had no idea. And when I went and watched him play Austin P. Austin P-A-Y. It's the weirdest pronunciation. Austin P.
That's why the back of their jersey say "Let's go P."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was that game threw me off because they did not look good that night, and they were like 1 for 19 at one point. They're 0 of 14, and then that week when we did the show, they were asking me how do I think they'll fare against Marquette, and I was saying hammer Marquette here because I just don't think Purdue has learned who they are yet. And while they were down 9 at one point to Marquette, and Marquette did cover, so I might have made a few people money that night if they had leaned on my advice, Purdue won the game, and they did prove who they were. And it just, like I said, that completely threw me off for what my expectations were building towards for this early part of the season. Now they've won against West Virginia, Gonzaga, and Duke, and I am right back to the point where I'm like, how is any team going to beat them? I can't fathom a way that any team can, because me and Kraig were talking the other night, and it's like, well, hell, they're going to get to Big Ten play undefeated, you know?
Well, for starters, they could shoot better from the 24% from three that teams are shooting against Purdue tonight. I think that'd be a way to beat us. So.
Yeah. Or even we had an Austin Peay player come on our space after the Purdue Austin Peay game, which was cool. You shared a little bit of the scout was pretty much like they were going to let Edey cook and then shut down everything else. It worked. Purdue went 2 for 19. Obviously, Edey was dominant, 30 points and 11 rebounds. They obviously did not have anywhere near the talent needed to be able to actually overcome that. But it's an interesting thought, at least, of let's try and just shut down everybody else, which I think is way harder said than done, especially, as these freshmen become more and more comfortable. The back, first Gillis, TKR rotating in at the 4, way more comfortable. But it is interesting if teams do kind of go to that, like, we're just going to let Edey cook and then nobody else is going to score. And then hopefully we can just kind of wear Edey down from that and then get him, put him in space on defense. And putting him in space on defense is probably the way just to beat Purdue, or at least have a chance. Even in this tournament, there was, I don't think West Virginia did it all, maybe a little bit when they had Mitchell at the 5, but nobody really was able to space Edey, which also shows like why it's so important to have, honestly, the combo of Gillis first and TKR. First was the Duke, the matchup for Duke, the length, the size for Filipowski. So now Edey can just kind of roam in the paint. But there's going to be times that it's Gillis, especially in the Big Ten. Big Ten play kind of like a Wall, like Tyler Wall or something like that. Like Gillis might be that matchup that needs to take on the 4 to kind of help out Edey. So.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that after the Marquette game, that they needed more from the 4. And boy, have they got it the last 3 games, each guy taking a turn. And I said a few times on both your guys' spaces that, if they could just hit 1 3, now we don't need 4 threes, just 1 from each of them, that's going to be what separates them, because it's a dagger shot, because you have so much more to worry about with the rest of the guys, on that lineup or whatever combination, Matt Painter has on the floor. And they've all brought it in different ways. TKR has certainly surprised me a little bit, because at first, watching him work his post-up game, it's like I was sitting there like, does he have enough meat on his bones to get the kind of position that he needs? Kraig was certainly a bigger fan at first. I was sitting there like, is he going to be able to get clean looks, in his post-up game? And you saw here in this last game against Duke how he just takes his time, and Jay Billis really talked about it on the telecast, how his footwork and his patience, in kind of working his way around his defender, had really helped him kind of magnify, his game inside on the post. So, I think that was a big step in the right direction for the redshirt freshman.
Yeah, and I love his game. I think his footwork's incredible. The one big thing that I question a little bit is he tends to be pretty dominant going one way, and shooting with that over his shooting with his right on that little hook. And I think, he's going to have to have a counter to that at some point. People are just going to key up and load up on that. But I do think he's going to be really good long term, and I would not be shocked at all if he doesn't have a couple of 20-point games in him at some point this year, especially if Zach does get in foul trouble. Because in terms of a true post player with post moves, I think he's the guy that's going to operate in that space if Zach isn't.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's shown the ability to get to that right hook, like you said, and the footwork is so good. It's that little like hop step into the hook. And it's been good so far. I haven't really seen too much, at least from post play, to be worried about. It'll be interesting because there's bound to be games where Edey does get in foul trouble, and it seems more like Trey is like closer to that true 5, at least in the system. Although I think we all kind of penciled in first more as that role. But it'll be interesting to see.
How
for sure.
surprising is that? I mean, Zach Edey last year felt like he'd get in foul trouble much quicker in limited minutes, 20 minutes. Now he's playing 30 minutes a game. He hasn't gotten in foul trouble yet. We all know it's coming eventually. But are the refs starting to learn? We had what's his name retire.
Bo Borowski.
Bo Borowski retired.
Borowski, yeah.
So maybe that's helping. But are the refs starting to learn how to officiate Zach Edey? I mean, they went to the monitor a couple times, but they didn't give him the flagrant, so I appreciated that. But are they learning a little bit more on how to officiate this guy? What do you think, Mitchell?
I don't think 6 games in you can say that. you know that game is coming. I mean,
Big Ten refs.
Officials, yeah. Different animal there.
But I mean, what built us the first initial big lead in that Duke game? It was the small lineup when Edey was out, right? So I mean, we don't want Edey in foul trouble, but I think we can be okay with him in foul trouble too. Obviously, we want Edey on the floor, but it's nothing to shake a stick about when that small lineup's out there, because they can ball too.
Well, in our first run against Duke was when the subs were in too. So I mean, we can operate without them. It'd be better if we didn't have to, but I think they're perfectly capable of doing that. Go ahead.
You said earlier, Kraig, you don't see Final Four teams or national champions without NBA draft picks. What do you think Edey is? I know he's not high on the boards, but
I'm not going on something that's going to be recorded and put out on the internet here.
He's leading National Player of the Year odds on KenPom. I mean, you have to. I know that a lot of the guys that make these draft boards aren't high on him right now, but you'd have to be an idiot if you're an NBA team and pass up on him if he continues at the pace he is.
I'll put it this way. I don't think last year's National Player of the Year makes it in the NBA longer than a year or two.
Well, and you saw Kofi Coburn get a G League invite and look, and I think they dropped him. I'm fairly certain because he's in Japan now, which you can make good money overseas. No hating on that, but you saw how fast Kofi. Now Edey's much taller, and I do think he's going to get a shot to be in the NBA. Whether or not he gets drafted in the first or second round is probably more likely. Is yet to be determined. I think it's definitely on the table, though, of him being drafted in the second round.
What I will speak to is just in generalities. I don't think there is much room in the NBA for true back-to-the-back centers that will potentially struggle with the increased spacing, getting put in pick-and-roll action time after time after time. Right. And that goes for Hunter Dickinson. Even though Hunter's got to pop out 3, I still think he's going to struggle mightily on defense in the NBA. That goes for Sheboy. Several. In the Big Ten, Cliff Amore, in my mind, is probably the best NBA prospect center.
Yeah, I agree. I like Rutgers. I think they're and especially because of him, I think they're going to be a tough team in the Big Ten. But, I mean, coming off the bench as a big, limited minutes, situational, I think is his best case scenario as a role in the NBA. I certainly think he'll get a look, but then how long he can stick will be the test. Do you guys all think, I mean, this is getting way ahead of ourselves, but this is certainly something I've thought of because we're all excited to bring Miles Colvin into the fold of this team next year. There's no chance Zach Edey is a Purdue Boilermaker next year for his senior year.
No, there's a chance. There definitely is. It's truly just going to be up to him. I follow a good amount of draft Twitter, podcasts, things like that, and if he does get drafted, it's a late second round. I think the most likely outcome would be probably undrafted, and then he kind of gets to pick where he goes, and then from there, there's a scenario where he could get spot minutes on the bench, especially in the regular season.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Once those draft boards were created, months ago, and now you've got. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine. I'm not saying Edey's going to win National Player of the Year, but he's on that trajectory, right?
Yeah.
How can an NBA team pass up on it? I don't care. You're right, Kraig. The spacing, that is not the NBA today. But, man, when you got a 7'4" dude that's going to get you a bucket, one wins National Player of the Year in college, I don't know how you don't take a flyer on that.
Well, here's the thing, habitual Boiler. It's like we just watched that Duke matchup, right? And he made anyone who watched that, him versus Lively, I mean, he made him look silly. Derek Lively's going to be a top 10 pick. Derek Lively's going to be a top 10 pick or top lottery pick or whatever. So that's just the NBA. Like, they just don't value the same things. And I think I agree with you.
In 1992, he would have been the number one pick.
It's a different
I think he has a
league.
spot in the lead. Yeah.
But if I could make a football comparison, Braggs, it was be like 15 years ago, an elite running college quarterback. It didn't matter how good of a running college quarterback he was. There wasn't space for him in the NFL. That's changed some now. But it's two different games entirely, and in terms of how they play it and the players that they utilize all the way through.
I'll say this. I think Braden Smith could help him maybe move up a few draft boards if they do more ball screens. I think if he can prove he can be and he rolls to that rim so hard, man. Some of those guys trying to get in the way and tag that roller by Edey, they just get trucked. I mean, it's literally they just bounce off him.
Right.
And Braden finds him, and NBA point guards will find him. I think the drop coverage is better. Like, the NBA does run a lot of drop. Guys like Rudy Gobert are really successful running drop coverage. I'm not saying he's like that at all, but I think there's a spot for him. I think he could be a backup big for a team, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get drafted. And if we could, I don't know what the NIL situation looks like. I know he's from Canada, so it's harder for him. I'd also heard he's I won't get into it. I think there's a small chance he could come back. I'll say that.
Well, only small.
Very small chance he could come back.
Well, I thought that last year because of some things that I'd heard too. But man, I got to think, if you're looking at late second round and there's a chance to make NIL money, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But
well, I mean, and I'm hoping it, right? Because I'm selfish. I want him to stay.
Absolutely.
Because they if he stays, I mean, they have legitimate chances to do great things this year in the Big Ten, in the March Madness tournament. They really could do it this year because the pressure of like last year's team, it was a last dance. They knew Jaden was going. They knew Travion was done. Sasha was done. Eric Hunter at the time said he wasn't, playing another year. So everyone knew this is it. And this team doesn't have that feel. They won't have that feel all season, no matter how high they climb up in the ranking. So I feel like the pressure will always be different because of that. But at the same time, selfishly, I would love him to stay because if you look forward to next year, you watch Roosevelt Colvin post highlights of his son jumping over people and dunking on them. I'm sitting there like, man, you dropped this dude into this team. I don't know where he's going to fit. I don't care. He's great. And just the maturity process of the guys that are currently on the team rolling over into next year. You have Edey come back, already a National Player of the Year candidate this year. Next year, that's even more the case, even more dominant. And you're talking about a team that could be one of the all-time greats, kind of. That's where I look at it just by basing off what I've seen so far with their potential this year. And I think this is a really interesting point with your, no team's ever gotten to the Final Four national championship without an NBA player.
No. That's not what I said.
Just the national
That is
championship.
Not what I said.
All right.
You got to remember, like, friggin' James Madison made the Final Four.
All right.
Yeah.
George Mason.
National championship.
Won a national championship.
George Mason,
so I think this is interesting because the other question that I would go to is, early in his career, we're talking about Zach Edey at the end of his, run here at Purdue potentially, but Brayden Smith, 6 games into his career. Kraig, you brought up a comparison I thought really nailed it on the head. People talking about Aaron Kraft and Brad Davison when it comes to, Brayden Smith, because he's an irritant to the rest of the Big Ten and this hustle guy. But you made the comparison of Chris Paul. And I think it's a really good comparison for how they play the game. Point guards that are really smart, know how to play off of guys, know how to play in the pick and roll, pass first, good shooters, high IQ, hustle, irritant. I think that comparison holds levity. Obviously not NBA Chris Paul, but college version of what a Chris Paul is. I'll start with you, Kraig, and then I'll let you guys take it from there. Do you think Braden Smith has NBA potential, or is that a bit too much for his, ceiling?
I mean, the question there is just the size. Like, when Carson went to the league off of that NCAA tournament run, and I didn't think Carson looked that small in college. And then he went out. I bought NBA League Pass, and the very first NBA game he played, I was like, oh my word, he's small. And dudes were just shooting right over top of him. And there seems to be this perspective of college basketball fans that you don't have to play defense in the NBA. Dudes are just that good at shot makers that it can make it look like guys aren't playing defense sometimes. You have to be able to defend in the NBA. And if you don't have some size in any guard spot, now the one place you can maybe get away with it, the fact that he's more of a facilitator and he's going to be a true point, whereas Carson was a shooting guard that they were trying to kind of turn into a quasi point guard. Maybe there's a chance there. I don't know. That's what Steve Nash was 3 or 4 inches taller than him, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know, man. You never know.
Aiden, you're the one that's followed him and seen him in high school. What do you think?
Yeah, I love him to death, but I don't think he's an NBA player just because, like Kraig said, you are who you can guard. I mean, they switch every possession in the NBA. They're going to switch you onto a big wing. I mean, imagine Braden trying to hold up in isolation against Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant.
That's the exact guy I was going to say. I was going to say, imagine him against Jason Tatum. Like, no way.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you saw Braden taking on. He was leveraging a big in the Duke game at one point. He was fronting them. I can't remember which guy it was, but he was.
And they were dumb enough not to throw that.
They
guy
didn't throw it in.
Yeah.
He was wide open the entire time.
He gets switched on the bigs way too much for my liking, but no, he hasn't been punished for it yet. But no, I think Braden's gonna make himself a lot of money in overseas. I think that's a great career for a guy. And I think he's going to be an all-time Purdue great because his production over the next 3 years is going to be absurd. I believe that. So,
and I think there's two guys on this team that are going to go down in the record books really high in a lot of categories because they're likely guys that are going to be here for 4 years that start as freshmen that are really, really high skilled. And they're going to rewrite some stuff in the record books.
Yep, I agree, 100%.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I was just gonna say, so like, I'm not comparing him to Cassius Winston at all right now. Like, Winston has, one of the greats, but like, Winston, outstanding, amazing career at Michigan State. 22 games rookie year, 7 games second year, and then he's not in the league now. Just kind of as like a thought with Braden Smith. I'm not, if Michigan State fans get a hold of this, I'm not saying Braden Smith's Cassius Winston or anything right now.
He's gonna be better.
Although I do. Yeah, true. I think Smith can be like Aiden said. Like, I think Smith will be like he has that potential of becoming an all-time great, really, at Purdue. That play right there kind of sums it up. To be honest, just absolutely an irritant. And his passing out of pick and roll has been so good. Just his pick and roll in general. And Marquette, he took over in scoring. The Gonzaga game, he just took over in passing, and the way he manipulates defenders with his eyes is unreal, especially for a freshman. Like, and even Lawyer too. Going to a different point of like Lawyer and Smith have played 6 collegiate games now, and like, if you just took some random fan that hasn't watched college basketball, and then you're like, pick out the 2 freshmen on Purdue, it'd be hard to pick out Smith and Lawyer the way that they're playing right now.
Maybe Lawyer with his baby face, but not his game.
That's Waddell for sure. If we're talking faces, Waddell for sure.
Waddell, the same Waddell that dunked against Duke.
Waddell dunked everything in high school. Like, if you watch his film and stuff, he dunked everything. And I know he has the torn, coming off the torn ACL, but it was because I watched probably 5-ish games of all of Smith, Lawyer, and Waddell over the summer. Waddell just dunked everything. The best one that I saw was in the state title game. He was going up against IU freshman now, CJ Gunn. Took him baseline, one dribble, just rose up over him, slammed on him. Just think it's fun to dunk on an IU player.
I think he's a great story. I think he's a great story. He had a really tough injury last year. And, he's the type of guy that you wouldn't even know if he could get any minutes. Matt Painter obviously is a huge fan of what he brings to the table because, the lineup may shrink when it gets into Big Ten. But as of right now, I still see all 10 getting minutes of some sort. The minutes might shrink a little, but they're all like at points in the last few years. At this time, there were guys that were getting minutes that didn't get any minutes by the time Big Ten play started, and Newman was victim of that at certain times last year. I think that Waddell will always find his way at some point into a game, maybe, obviously limited basis. So I love his story. I love his game. I love his poise. He's the 10th guy coming off the bench. So that just goes to show you how deep this team is.
But he brings some length as a defender.
Oh yeah.
That in some games he's going to get in there just because of his length and ability to defend in a different way from that position.
I mean, they were going, I forget which, it might have been Marquette. They were going offense defense with Waddell.
Marquette.
Marquette. Waddell was the defender. You heard last year before the ACL, like the pro guys were coming in for Ivy Travion and they were walking out like, hey, who's this Waddell kid? Painter, I'm one of the Newbert or Black and Gold interviews. He was like, if Waddell didn't tear an ACL, he's probably a 25-minute guy right now. Like he's, there's just been a lot of high praise for him.
When we had Sasha on to start last year, I asked him, who's standing out to you at practice? And I was trying to set him up for Jaden or whoever, you know what I mean? Like, and that was who he said, Brian Waddell, before the injury. And this was in the off season before the injury, obviously. So that spoke volumes because, Sasha doesn't blow smoke on guys. Like he, if you got it, he'll say it. But if you don't, he's not going to just gas you up for no reason. So that stood out to me.
And he's gotten a little bit more aggressive here just lately. Like in the last two games, 2 games ago, there was twice when things were getting pretty stagnant, when he drove and he was never looking for his own shot. He drove and knew exactly where he was taking that defender to free up so he could pass the ball to Zach once and maybe Caleb the other time. I don't remember. And then this last game got more aggressive. I think he missed the one shot, but he went at the rim hard and then he got the dunk. So I think maybe the success of everybody else is emboldening him some too. But I think it'll be real interesting to see where he's at in 10 or 12 games because I think he's starting to see the window of go ahead and take my shot.
And if Ethan Morton wasn't playing as well as he was, I wonder if we'd see a little bit more of Waddell. I don't think anyone really can replicate the connectivity of Morton on the wing right now. But Waddell's length is better than Morton's, and he's a better shooter. So, I think we could see him step up in a game. Doesn't it feel like all these bench guys are going to give us 21 game where we need it? I mean, they all feel like they have that capability. I think Waddell included. I coached basketball at West Lafayette High School, and my head coach here coached Waddell in high school. So he's been talking him up for a while now, and he always talks about Waddell's a really quiet personality. So if you can get him vocal and get him going, get him in the flow of the game, like the talent's there. He may be a fairly quiet personality, and he probably needs to get his sea legs under him with the ACL. But the talent's there. I would not be shocked at all if he's starting at some point in his Purdue career.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, even sorry, I just want to give Habitual Boiler a chance. He sent me a message along. We are rounding third on this show anyway, but I'll let him jet now. But before you go, Habitual Boiler, again, the face reveal was we are honored to give your first face reveal here on Brags in the Stands. That's a huge moment. You have a huge following, on Purdue, sports Twitter, and that's a crazy place. And you're holding it down for all the different sports, and you do spaces after football games and basketball games. You and Riles, you guys do a great job. And we appreciate when you guys have us on. Kraig and I, I always enjoy the conversation. But why don't you let the listeners and the viewers know where they can find you on Twitter and the work you're up to with Boiler Up, Beer Down. I didn't mess it up there. But why don't you tell the people for yourself, and then you can hop on off to bed.
No problem. Find me on Twitter at Habitual Boiler, our podcast, and most of our spaces run through my account. Our podcast is BUBD, Boiler Up Beer Down, on all the major podcasts. And guys, thanks for having us on. This is super fun, and the first time I've ever been able to do this. So appreciate it. You guys do a great job, Kraig, Braggs, all of you. We got a really fun team this year, so let's enjoy the hell out of it, and let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, appreciate you. Like I said, a little tricky with a lot of people in talking on video like this. Spaces is a little more inviting to just kind of go back and forth, and sometimes it can be tricky this way. So just a feeling out process. I want to do more of these as the season goes on. Do one when the brackets are coming out and things like that, where a lot of people can come in and give their opinion. So, I appreciate you guys, showing some patience and working with me, trying to do this 5-man weave here tonight. So we'll let you go to bed first, and then we'll start saying our goodbyes and putting everybody to bed. So have a good night, Habitual Boiler.
Go Boilers.
Boiler
Dude,
up.
I want 4 more so we can have the Brady Bunch, and I can be like.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we are. Hey, the Boiler Brady Bunch. Go ahead. What?
Nothing. I'm thinking I don't even know if these two guys are old enough to know what the Brady Bunch is.
No.
I know, it is a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's before my time too now, Kraig. Okay.
Well, I mean, I saw reruns. Okay.
Yeah. No. Hey, we appreciate you tuning in all night, Troy. Everybody that's been tuning in, you're always welcome to get your thoughts in the chat, from YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, and we'll try to bring them up. And if you ever have questions for our guests, here going forward, you're always welcome to get those out there. We plan on bringing on current players, former players. Obviously we had a bunch of different players on last year. Isaac Haas, Chris Kramer, obviously. Bobby's always on with us. We had Robbie Hummel on last year at one point. So we try to, mix it up this year. We're going to start bringing on some current players when their schedule works, because we don't want to impede what they're doing on the basketball court. People start blaming us for a down night at Florida State because they're on too late with us here on Braggs in the Stands. So, one guy, and then we'll go, because I don't want to keep Kraig or any of us up too late. But I feel like we've talked about everybody basically, but David Jenkins and Brandon Newman. David, we can save for another day. I still think he has good potential, and he's got a great shot making ability. He's getting ready to pass 2,000 points in his career. He's made all conference for UNLV. He's a good pickup, and I kind of enjoy the fact that he chose to come to Purdue with some of these other transfers who chose not to come here, and I guarantee they're regretting that decision watching how Purdue's playing right now. So shout out to David Jenkins for choosing to come to Purdue. It was a wise one, and he's probably going to have some huge moments on big stages for a top 5 team in the country, and that's why you come to Purdue for all those other transfers that thought the grass was greener elsewhere.
Amen.
You want to play for a coach like Matt Painter and a team like the Purdue Boilermakers. But I'm a guy that's always been critical of Brandon Newman, so I want to talk about him and give him his shine, because Brandon is an anomaly. He's an enigma. He plays erratic is the word. But at the same time, he's finally started to get some minutes. Last year was the struggle. He had the Penn State moment in the Big Ten tournament. This year, Painter is starting to show some patience with Brandon Newman and the way he plays the game. He may not be as fluid as, Fletcher Lawyer, and that's why Fletcher is starting. But there is something Brandon Newman brings to the table. And at some point, I personally have to let go of the fact that when he gets the ball, he just wants to shoot, because he rebounds the ball well. He hustles. He's diving. He's drinking beer while he's diving. He's playing
defense.
Playing
great defense this year, Braggs. That's the difference.
Defense. Exactly. That was the final point of it. You
Sorry.
nailed it.
Sorry.
No. But I want to make sure I say it, because we talk a lot about him on here. He's a region guy. I followed him. I covered him for Region Sports Network at Valpo High School. I root for him hard, but the thing that I always would get annoyed with Purdue's fan base is this kind of affinity for him when he was getting benched and blaming Matt for not giving him a chance. And I felt like it was on Brandon to earn those chances because Painter has a specific way you need to play if you get those minutes. But he has shown me this year what he can be on this team as a role player, and there's nothing to be ashamed of with that. Brandon could be a very strong role player on this team. I don't know who wants to take it first, but your thoughts on Brandon Newman's season so far. I guess we'll start with you, Aiden.
Oh yeah. No, I think really I like what he's brought to the table. He's really bought into the system. It seems like early in games, his defensive rebounding has been huge. We're quick to praise Braden for the way he rebounds the ball defensively. Brandon's been nearly as good, crashing in from that guard spot and helping out on the defensive boards. Part of why we've been a good rebounding team. I think you like his shot making. I think he takes some questionable shots at times. Those are the ones that are always going to kind of upset us because they are the ones that really stick out like a sore thumb with this team. Just like that one Fletch took off the ball screen. That was just an awful shot.
Yeah.
Like that stuck out so much because of how few bad shots this team takes.
Right.
And so I think that hurts Brandon and to some extent David's sort of perception within the fan base, but they play their role. They do what they need to do. They need to have, ultimately we got to get Fletch and Braden to blow. And these guys are talented guys. And I have no doubt in my mind that there will be a game where Brandon scores 25 or whatever, and we win the game because of him.
I think he had 28 as a freshman once.
Yeah, which is why I think everyone has that affinity for him. Like they've seen him do it. And so I think he was one of the breakout guys last year going into the year. And then for him to be kind of stuck on the bench was inexplicable for a lot of people. For us who watched the team really closely, it was pretty obvious he didn't want to play defense. And he was taking bad shots, and now he's playing defense, like Kraig said. He's just buying in, I think, and he's realizing maybe that, this is a special team. It's something that he's able to be a part of. And again, he's playing 44% of the minutes so far this year. I mean, it's not like the guy's stuck on the pine.
And like David Jenkins with the whole shouting him out for choosing Purdue, Brandon Newman chose to stay and not take the easy route and transfer out of here. We've had some different players do that, and Brandon didn't. And that's a big testament to his character. He didn't take the easy way out and run to another school where he could get minutes. He dug his feet in, and he's carving out his role. And little by little, if he just learns to do what he needs to do on the offensive side as far as his responsibilities, he's going to get all the shots in the world. And I think it's just going to continue to ascend.
Yeah, and one more thing on him before I kind of pass the baton is like, this freshman with a baby face, as you mentioned, has come in and taken his spot, essentially. And anyone watching knows that's the right move, obviously. But, we haven't heard a word from Brandon about it. He's bought in. He's celebrating on the bench. He comes in. He gets his shots. I think you're right. He could be probably putting up 25 shots a game at Valpo or wherever right now if he had transferred. But it's really a credit to him that he's stuck it out, and he's going to help the team this year. No question about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's been good. I'm kind of like you, where it's like just the shots sometimes just irks me. Aiden kind of kept me in check. I think it was the Gonzaga game that I texted you, and Brandon Newman put up a quick one. It led to a Gonzaga bucket, and I was like, man, just hasn't looked great. And then Aiden was like, yeah, it was a bad shot, but he's actually been good. And then when I rewatched, I was like, oh yeah, no. I just kind of let that one really bad shot kind of cloud my judgment. He's been working really well on defense. I think Morton's the best perimeter defender, and I don't think it's really that close for Purdue. I think Newman's probably second, or at least you can make the argument for second. He at least has the athleticism that he can get around screens. He's buying in more. The play, when I was doing the thread today, there was a play. I don't remember the exact setup, but I think it was Smith had the ball on the left wing. Edey was kind of posting up on that right block, or on that block then. And then Newman was on top of the key, and then whoever the other two guys were opposite, weak side. Smith can't get the ball to Edey because, Smith doesn't like throwing post entry passes at times. Swings it to Newman, and Newman had a shot if he wanted it. And last year it's a shot for sure. Like he had enough space that you're like, okay, catch and shoot, like it's cool. But he didn't this year. He caught it, kind of set himself, and then just fired it into Edey, and then he drew a foul immediately. And I think that's kind of that play specifically was like, oh, Newman's like, he's really grown. Like I really think last year, that's a shot that he puts up, and maybe it goes in. But I think from a process standpoint, it's not a great shot. Whereas he fires it into 7-4 Edey, and if he didn't get fouled, it was going to be 2 points. So no, I've really liked what I've seen. It's interesting with that second unit. There's a reason that he's on the second unit, and it's because the ball will stick at times with his hands or in his hands. And Jenkins is a little bit of the same way. They're both kind of that off ball, like just kind of score, which I think can cause some problems down the line. I think, the bench unit has been okay at times, but one point we're going to kind of calling back to Waddell. Aiden brought this up. We were texting earlier, is like, what if, the thought of not like reducing Morton's minutes, but getting Waddell a little bit more in that front unit and then getting Morton in that second unit a little bit. Because then Morton, if he has the ball, now Newman and Jenkins can kind of fly off screens. Kind of off topic, but yeah.
It's interesting, but selfishly, I'm like, the way Ethan, Fletcher, and Braden play together, I get it from trying to get more out of the bench unit, and having a facilitator there would certainly help them. But man, the way the three of those guys play together is pretty fun to watch. Before I finish this off with Kraig, I'm going to let you guys go. We've reached the 2-hour mark of the show. Aiden and Joe, you guys do incredible work. So I'll start with you, Joe, and then we'll finish with you, Aiden. You guys can tell everybody where to find you on Twitter and the work you guys do as far as coverage with this team.
Yeah, you can find me at Twitter at Joe_Jackson2210. With a name like Joe Jackson, you run out of combos. So Joe_Jackson2210. I do a lot of Twitter threads for anybody that doesn't know. So, day after the game, unless, the sites that I use to watch the games aren't posted, but generally the day after the game, I rewatch the game, post clips to Twitter, and just kind of break down what I see. I do want to quickly say, like with those, I am always trying to learn. That's the whole reason I started this, is I just want to learn more X's and O's from basketball. It's helped me meet new people, which is also helped, but everybody feel free to don't take my word as the truth. If you see something you disagree with what I say, let me know. And because I think with basketball, there's a lot of gray, and there's a chance we could both be right, or I just didn't see it. And so I definitely want people to, interact if they see something. But the other place you can find me is cbbreview.com. I do Purdue a lot there, articles. And then I'm also expanding kind of into the Big Ten. Even with my Twitter, I plan on doing more Big Ten threads, just of any games really that I want. So,
yeah, I mean, when I came into your spaces at the start of the season, and you were doing a breakdown of the whole Big Ten, I was like, for somebody that is spreading my coverage out across NFL, football, and Bears and everything, I was like, how the hell do they know everything about every team in the Big Ten? It's a feeling out period these first couple months to getting to know every team. By the end of the year, I can start spitting it out like you guys do, but you were doing it to start the year, and that intrigued me, showing how much you guys do your homework and are locked into this. So I appreciate your coverage. Aiden, why don't you go ahead and give us where you're from and where people can find you and what you do.
Yeah. So you can follow me on Twitter at Aiden Kunst, Kunst. Pretty unique name there, so pretty easy to get that username. I don't do a ton on Twitter. I'll post kind of random thoughts I have on Purdue. I just little Ethan Morton clip I put out today, stuff like that. Joe does the real work. Really make sure you follow him if you want Purdue analysis. I'm an assistant coach with West Lafayette Basketball here in town, so our season's getting started, so I don't have as much time to kind of go rewatch every game. Also an AAU coach with Kyle Guy's team, actually, his program. And so trying to get into the coaching side of things, but big Purdue fan. I'm here at Purdue. I'm a junior at Purdue. So I like to follow along and really just love watching the team. And so you'll see some stuff from me maybe that I find interesting on my Twitter, but certainly make sure you follow Joe, and we do the spaces after each game. Habitual Boiler does a great job too, but I think we try to really I don't know, just look at it from an analytical perspective because that's how the two of us think. So
Yeah, that's what's interesting and fun to us. So I know he's kind of downplaying himself, but if he does post stuff on Twitter, like check it out. If he posts something, it's good. So.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming on tonight. Again, appreciate all your patience while trying to figure out how to make this work. Like I said, you guys have shown us a lot of love. So has Habitual Boiler. So I wanted, to give you guys an opportunity to give your thoughts on our platform. Because I believe, like I said, in building bridges and promoting everybody's work while we do what we're doing over here at Brags in the Stands. So again, thank you. We'll do it again here soon. Again, you can find Joe and Aiden on Twitter. They do spaces after games. If you don't know what spaces are, it's basically a place where you can go and have a conversation. It's not on video. You can grab a mic and even ask questions or give your own thoughts. And they do great breakdowns post-game talking about the game. So if you're on Twitter, if you're on that cesspool of an app, you can find a bright spot in Joe and Aiden talking Purdue Boilermakers basketball. So we'll let you guys go. Aiden, I can tell you and Kraig are getting tired. I'm on the Midwest time, so it's only 10 o'clock here, but it's 11 o'clock there. I'm sure you got homework to do. We'll get to the left-right chant later. That's for another episode. You guys better not be doing the left-right chant because I fucking hate it. Pardon my language, but I can't stand it. Don't do it while our team is shooting free throws, but I'll go on that rant for another day. So have a good night, guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Appreciate it.
Later. That's Aiden Kunst and Joe Jackson as I remove Kraig, which I'm sure he probably wouldn't fight me on at this point. Over 2 hours on this show, but I think a lot of really good stuff. We pretty much covered every player on this team. Maybe didn't give enough love to Ethan Morton, who had 19 assists and 1 turnover over the last 3 games. But we have all season to talk Purdue Boilermakers basketball. We might even have Ethan Morton come on and tell him himself how he's feeling about his season. And that's what we're going to do here as much as we can while it fits into our schedule. Craig's a busy man with his day job, and I'm doing all sorts of stuff as well. And we have families to tend to as well. So we're trying to do it as much as we can week to week. Once we get to that rhythm, maybe we'll start pounding out more shows, try to do post-game shows and things of that nature. So just bear with us. We had Matt Painter on here a few weeks ago. Tonight, we got to give a shout out to Chris Kramer and Bobby Ridell, who's always showing us love here at Brags in the Stands. More great guests to come, more great people that are covering this team from the stands or in the media and everything else in between. Kraig, any final thoughts before I, do my, 12-minute good Midwestern goodbye?
No, that was funny the other day when somebody called us out on the spaces for
that's me. It's me doing that.
20-minute Midwestern goodbye of everybody trying to say bye but not being impolite enough to just go. So yeah, that was great. No, man, I really don't have that many final thoughts. Man, that 5 to 7 minute stretch that Smith had against Gonzaga, I think was just epic. I can't believe we didn't manage to get into that tonight.
I literally made my wife watch that stretch.
Yeah, that to me, that was almost like Jaden. I mean, Jaden's was an entire half against Illinois last year, but similar type of thing. It was just puppets on a friggin' string, getting whatever he wanted, making guys go wherever he wanted. Defense and offense, guys just gravitated and dictated. He dictated everybody on that court where they were, manipulated them to get anybody a shot he wanted to get a shot. And it was just a master class on how to be a point guard. But with that said, man, I'm looking forward to more shows this year. I know you're real busy. The good news is we don't have to worry about a postseason show for you. So
with the Bears,
yeah,
you mean the playoffs, yeah. No, we don't.
So we don't have to worry about that. So you'll be freed up when we get to that time of year. So.
Mm-hmm. Keep taking pot shots at my quarterback situation on Twitter, and I'll have you report it, sir.
All right, I gotta go, man. I gotta do a recruiting visit in the morning. Not for Purdue basketball, for anybody watching, for different reasons. So,
all right. Well, then, without further ado, for Kraig Bowers, I'm Greg Braggs Jr. We're talking Boilers basketball all season, and this is Brags in the Stands.